The golden ship appeared in Earth's sky like a falling star, but it moved too slowly and too straight to be anything natural. Captain Deho watched it through the observation deck of the Resilient Dawn, his coffee growing cold in his hands. The ship was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, all smooth curves and impossible angles that seemed to bend light around them. "Well, that's not from around here," said Ji-woo, floating upside down near the ceiling as she worked on a loose panel. She had been fixing the same air recycler for 3 days, but only because the replacement parts were stuck in customs on Mars. "Think they're friendly?" Deho shrugged. He had seen stranger things in the deep ocean salvage business. At least, this mystery was happening in space, where the water pressure could not crush him into paste. We'll find out soon enough. The alien ship sent a message in perfect Korean, which was the first surprise. The second surprise was that they wanted to meet with Earth's military leaders. The third surprise was that somehow, the Resilient Dawn had been selected as humanity's representative vessel. "There must be some mistake," Taemin said when they received the formal invitation. He was checking the ship's environmental systems, making sure they could handle whatever atmosphere the aliens preferred. "We're a salvage crew, not soldiers." "Speak for yourself," Heejin called from the engine room, where sparks were flying from something that probably should not be sparking. "I was in the engineering corps before I got bored and started fixing impossible things for fun." Minho, the ship's doctor, looked up from his medical supplies. "Define soldiers. I mean, we all survived the Titan Station rescue, and that place was literally falling into a gas giant while on fire." "That was a Tuesday," Deho said. "And we got paid extra for the radiation exposure." The alien ship, which called itself the Harmony of Stars, was larger than anything humans had ever built. It was also more comfortable, with gravity that felt exactly like Earth normal and air that tasted like spring mornings. Ambassador Veltar met them in a room that looked like it was carved from a single crystal, all smooth surfaces and soft light. Veltar was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that changed color like an oil slick. When the ambassador spoke, the words appeared in the air as glowing symbols that somehow made perfect sense in Korean. "Greetings, warriors of Earth," Veltar said. "We have studied your species for some time. Your military history is most impressive." Deho glanced at his crew. So Young, their communications officer, was trying not to laugh. Junseo, the navigator, was taking notes on the alien technology, with the enthusiasm of someone who had just discovered a new way to break the laws of physics. "Military history?" Deho asked. "Indeed. Your conquest of the ocean depths, your successful colonization of your system's most hostile environments, your casual approach to radiation and extreme temperatures. Truly, you are a warrior species without equal." Yunwoo, the chief engineer, made a small choking sound. "They think deep-sea fishing is warfare." "The Antarctic research stations," a Young whispered. "They think those are military outposts." Veltar continued, apparently not noticing the humans' confusion. "The Galactic Council faces a great threat. The Void Swarm has consumed 17 star systems. They are relentless, merciless, and seemingly unstoppable. We need warriors who do not know the meaning of fear." "Oh, we know fear," Woojin said quietly. He was the ship's security chief, and he had spent 5 years working on asteroid mining platforms where a single mistake meant floating in space forever. "We just got used to ignoring it." The ambassador's skin shifted to a pleased purple color. "Excellent. This is exactly the attitude we need." Veltar activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red spots marked the areas where the Void Swarm had attacked. The destruction was total. Entire solar systems reduced to empty space and cosmic dust. "They consume everything," Veltar explained. "Matter, energy, even the quantum fabric of space itself. No weapon can harm them. No defense can stop them. They are the ultimate predator." Inho, the weapons specialist, studied the display with professional interest. "So they eat spaceships?" "They eat everything. But they're probably not used to things that fight back in creative ways," Boram said. She was the ship's pilot, and she had once navigated through a solar storm by riding the magnetic field lines like a roller coaster. I mean, if everyone runs away or tries to fight them the same way, they wouldn't expect something different. Veltar's skin shifted to a worried orange. You speak as if you would engage them directly. Well, yeah, Kyung-soo said. He was monitoring the alien ship's sensor readings with the casual attitude of someone reading a weather report. That's usually how these things work. Big scary thing shows up, we figure out what makes it tick, then we either make friends with it or make it go away. Make friends? Veltar's skin went completely white. The void swarm has no consciousness as we understand it. They are pure destruction given form. Everything has a consciousness, Dong-hyun said. He was the maintenance chief, and he had once convinced a malfunctioning AI to stop trying to kill everyone by explaining that its behavior was inefficient. Sometimes you just have to speak their language. The ambassador looked around at the humans, clearly trying to understand how a species could be so calm when discussing the galaxy's greatest threat. Your confidence is remarkable. Tell me, what is the most dangerous situation your species has faced? Su Jin, who handled communications relay, thought for a moment. Probably that time Young-ho here fell into a black hole's event horizon, and we had to fish him out with a modified tractor beam and some really creative physics. Young-ho, the junior engineer, grinned. That was fun. We learned a lot about time dilation that day. You fell into a black hole, Veltar said slowly, and you describe it as fun? Well, we got him out, Daeho said. And we published a paper on temporal mechanics that revolutionized faster-than-light travel. So really, it was a productive accident. Veltar's skin cycled through several colors that probably did not have names in any human language. I begin to understand why the Council's xenobiologists classified your species as incomprehensibly adaptive. Is that good or bad? Jiwoo asked. For the void swarm, Veltar said, it may be very bad indeed. The Galactic Council's main chamber was a work of art that had taken 3 civilizations and 200 years to complete. Every surface was polished to perfection, every angle calculated to inspire awe and respect. The acoustic design allowed even the softest whisper to reach every corner of the vast space. It was also, according to Taemin, completely impractical for actual meetings. Look at this place, he said, running his hands along a crystalline wall that pulsed with inner light. Beautiful, sure, but where do you put your coffee? Where are the emergency exits? What happens if the artificial gravity fails and everyone starts floating around? Ambassador Veltar tried to explain that such concerns were handled by advanced technology, but Taemin was already examining the gravity generators with the critical eye of someone who had fixed similar systems while they were exploding. This is fascinating, Yunwoo said, studying the energy readings from her scanner. They're using quantum field manipulation to create localized space-time distortions. Very elegant, but what's their backup system? Backup system? Asked Counselor Jexhai, a being that looked like a collection of geometric shapes held together by pure mathematics. You know, for when the primary system fails, Hyejin explained. Everything fails eventually, usually at the worst possible moment. Our technology does not fail, Jexhai said with the confidence of someone who had never worked a day in engineering. The humans exchanged glances. Junseo made a note in his personal log. Day 1. Aliens have never heard of Murphy's Law. This will end badly. The formal welcome ceremony began with speeches in 17 different languages, most of which sounded like musical instruments having an argument. The translation matrix converted everything into perfect Korean, but somehow managed to make even the most dramatic declarations sound like a grocery list. We gather today to witness the joining of species, proclaimed High Counselor Mirvak, whose species apparently evolved from crystal formations. May this alliance bring peace to the void-touched regions of space. So Young raised her hand. Quick question about the translation thing. Does it handle idioms and colloquialisms? Because I'm wondering if void-touched means what I think it means or if it's some kind of space curse word. The council chamber fell silent. Apparently, interrupting the High Counselor was not standard protocol. Also, So Young continued, can it translate Korean profanity? Because we have some really creative curse words that might be useful in diplomatic situations. Veltar's skin went through a rapid color change that looked like a rainbow having a seizure. Perhaps we should proceed with the tactical briefings. The briefings were thorough, detailed, and completely useless. The aliens had maps of every void swarm attack, energy readings from their ships, behavioral analysis of their movement patterns, and three-dimensional models of their typical battle formations. What they did not have was any idea how to fight them. So they eat energy, Ah Young said, studying the data with the same expression she used for particularly interesting puzzles. They consume matter. They drain power from ships and turn it against their enemies. And they reproduce by converting space itself into more of themselves. That's correct, said War Coordinator Velnash, whose species looked like armored squids with too many eyes. They are the perfect predator. Perfect predator for what? Kyungsoo asked. I mean, what's their niche? What environmental pressures shape their evolution? They are not evolved, Velnash explained. They are entropy given form, the heat death of the universe made manifest. Oh, come on, Wu Jun said. Everything evolves from something. Even if they're artificial, someone or something made them for a purpose. What's their design goal? The aliens looked confused by this question. For them, the void swarm was a force of nature, like gravity or electromagnetism. The idea that it might have understandable motivations was apparently revolutionary. Minho was more interested in the practical details. What happens to the biological matter they consume? Do they digest it, convert it to energy, store it for later use? They consume it, Velnash said, clearly struggling with the concept that consumption might be a process rather than an end state. But how? Minho pressed. I mean, conservation of energy still applies, right? Matter can't just disappear. It has to go somewhere, Donghyun nodded. And if they're converting matter to energy, there should be waste products. Heat, radiation, exotic particles. Where does all that go? The war coordinator's tentacles twitched nervously. These are not questions that have military relevance. Everything has military relevance, Inho said. If I'm going to shoot at something, I want to know what happens when I hit it. Does it explode? Does it absorb the energy? Does it get angry and call its friends? Young Ho was taking detailed notes on the council chamber's construction. This architecture is really interesting. The acoustic properties are designed to amplify certain frequencies while dampening others. I bet if you hit the right resonance frequency, you could make the whole structure vibrate like a tuning fork. Please do not experiment with our sacred architecture, Veltar said quickly. Oh, I wasn't going to break it, Young Ho assured him. I just wanted to see if the harmonic resonance could be used as a communication system. You could probably send messages through the structure itself using frequency modulation. Bo-Ram was studying the chamber from a pilot's perspective. The sightlines are terrible for navigation. All these curved surfaces would create sensor shadows. And what's with all the decorative projections? They'd create drag if this was a ship. This is not a ship, Counselor Jexhai said. It is a place of governance and deliberation. Same principles apply, Bo-Ram said. Function follows form. If the form is this complicated, either the function is really complex or someone was showing off. Su-Jin had found something more interesting than architecture. The Council's communication arrays were unlike anything in human technology, capable of instantaneous transmission across galactic distances. How do you prevent signal interference? And what happens if someone tries to jam your communications? Jamming is impossible, declared Technical Coordinator Plexum, a being that looked like a geometric equation with delusions of grandeur. Our quantum entanglement networks cannot be disrupted. Challenge accepted, Su-Jin said with a grin that made Veltar's skin turn a worried shade of purple. The formal presentations continued for hours, with each alien speaker explaining why the Void Swarm was unstoppable, unbeatable, and utterly without weakness. The humans listened politely, but Daeho could see they were getting restless. Finally, Ji-Woo raised her hand. So let me get this straight. You've got an enemy that eats energy, consumes matter, and reproduces by converting space itself. And your plan is to fight them with energy weapons, matter-based ships, and conventional tactics. What else would we use? Velnash asked. I don't know, Ji-Woo said. But doing the same thing that's failed 17 times and expecting different results is pretty much the definition of insanity. We are not insane, Velnash said stiffly. No, Daeho said, looking around at his crew. You're not. But we might be. The Kepler 442 system was marked on every galactic chart as a navigation hazard. The star was unstable, prone to solar flares that could fry electronics from 3 astronomical units away. The system contained 2 black holes in a binary orbit, creating gravitational waves that could tear apart any ship foolish enough to get too close. Quantum storms erupted randomly from tiers in spacetime itself, and somewhere in the chaos lived energy beings that fed on Starship power systems. The Galactic Council had lost 47 ships trying to map the system. They called it the Death Maze and marked it as permanently off limits. Captain Deho called it Tuesday. Okay, so we've got solar radiation, gravitational anomalies, quantum storms, and hostile energy parasites, he said, reviewing the mission briefing. Sounds like a typical salvage job in the Titan system, except with better weather. The resilient Dawn dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge, and immediately every alarm on the ship started screaming. The radiation levels were high enough to cook an unprotected human in minutes. The gravitational stress was pulling the ship in 6 different directions at once, and according to the sensors, space itself was having some kind of nervous breakdown. "This is beautiful," Young said, watching the sensor readings like other people watched sunsets. The energy patterns were unlike anything in the textbooks, chaotic and wild and completely impossible. "Look at these quantum fluctuations. The spacetime metric is oscillating at frequencies that shouldn't be stable." Yunwu was already recalibrating the ship's systems. "The gravity waves are actually helping with our power efficiency. If we time our engine burns right, we can use the gravitational slingshot effect to save fuel." "The radiation is interesting too," Minho added, checking his medical scanners. "It's not the usual electromagnetic spectrum. There are exotic particles in this mix that don't exist anywhere else in the galaxy." Junseo was plotting a course through the chaos like he was planning a scenic drive. "The gravitational anomalies follow a pattern. It's not random. There's an underlying structure to the way space-time is twisted here. We can use that." On the Council ship Harmony of Stars, Ambassador Veltar watched the human vessel's progress with growing alarm. The Death Maze had killed crews with centuries of experience and technology, far more advanced than anything Earth possessed. The humans should have been destroyed within minutes of entering the system. Instead, they were treating it like a training exercise. "Energy storm approaching from Sector 7, Kyungsoo reported. "It's a big one. Quantum coherence is breaking down across a sphere roughly the size of Jupiter." "Fun," said Boram, adjusting their course toward the storm instead of away from it. "I've always wondered what it would be like to fly through a region where the laws of physics are more like guidelines." The storm hit them like a freight train made of pure chaos. Reality twisted around the ship, turning up into sideways and making time run backwards for 17 seconds. The hull plating began to exist in a superposition of states, simultaneously solid and gaseous until He-Jin convinced it to pick one and stick with it. "This is unprecedented," Taemin said, watching his environmental systems try to figure out how to regulate an atmosphere that kept changing its molecular structure. "The storm is rewriting the fundamental constants of matter." "Yeah, but look at the patterns," Woo-Jin said, studying the chaos with the eye of someone who had learned to see order in the most unlikely places. "It's not truly random. There are rules here, just not the rules we're used to." Young-Ho was taking detailed measurements of everything. "The quantum field fluctuations are following a fractal pattern. If we can map the recursion, we might be able to predict where the stable zones will form." So Young had discovered that the communication systems were picking up signals from the storm itself, not radio waves or any kind of electromagnetic radiation, but something that seemed to be pure information encoded in the quantum foam. "There's definitely intelligence here. Not artificial intelligence, not biological intelligence, but something else." "The energy beings," Sujin said. "They're not parasites. They're trying to communicate." On cue, the ship's power systems began to drain, but instead of panicking, Dong-Hyun started making adjustments to the power distribution. "They're not stealing our energy," he realized. "They're trying to establish a connection. Look at the pattern of the drain, it's not random." Inho studied the energy patterns with professional interest. "It's like they're knocking. They want to know if anyone's home." The aliens watching from the safety of interstellar space could not believe what they were seeing. The humans had not only survived the death maze, they were having a conversation with forces that had been considered mindlessly hostile. "How are they doing this?" Veltar asked the ship's science officer, a being whose species had evolved from mathematical equations. "I do not know," the science officer admitted. "Their methods make no sense. They are treating lethal phenomena as environmental conditions. They are attempting to communicate with forces that have no known consciousness. They are using chaos theory to navigate through regions where chaos theory should not apply. Are they succeeding? The science officer's geometric form shifted into what might have been a shrug. Define success. They have not been destroyed, which is more than we can say for any other ship that has entered that system. Aboard the Resilient Dawn, the crew had established a working relationship with the energy beings. It turned out they were not hostile. They were just hungry. The quantum storms that plagued the system were their natural feeding ground, but the energy was so chaotic that they had trouble processing it efficiently. So you need someone to regulate the power flow, Haijin said, speaking to the beings through controlled fluctuations in the ship's electrical system, like a filter or a converter. The response came as a warm feeling in the ship's circuits, which So Young interpreted as agreement. We could set up a resonance cascade in the ship's main deflector, Yunwoo suggested. Channel the storm energy through our power grid and clean up the frequency patterns. Give them something they can actually digest. In exchange for safe passage? Daeho asked. The warm feeling returned, along with something that might have been gratitude. Jiwoo, who had been quietly working on the ship's external repairs during the entire conversation, looked up from her work. Anyone else think it's funny that we just solved a problem that's been stumping the galactic community for centuries, and we did it by being nice to the things that live here? Not nice, Minho corrected. Practical. We needed to get through the system safely. They needed help with their digestion. Mutual benefit. Same thing, Jiwoo said with a grin. Sometimes being nice is the most practical thing you can do. The energy beings guided them through the rest of the death maze, showing them safe paths between the gravitational anomalies and stable zones within the quantum storms. What had taken other ships weeks to navigate, the Resilient Dawn crossed in hours. As they emerged from the system, Feltar contacted them with something that sounded like awe in the translated voice. How? The ambassador asked. How did you survive what has destroyed entire fleets? Daeho thought about it for a moment. I guess we're just used to impossible things. When you live on a planet where the weather can kill you, the pressure can crush you, and the radiation can cook you, you learn to work with hostile environments instead of fighting them. But the death maze is not an environment, Veltar protested. It is pure chaos. Everything looks like chaos until you understand the pattern, Young said. Earth taught us that a long time ago. The Void Swarm arrived without warning, dropping out of hyperspace like black tears in reality itself. The ships were wrong in ways that made the human brain hurt to look at them directly. Angles that bent inward on themselves, surfaces that absorbed light without reflecting anything back, and a presence that made the quantum vacuum itself feel cold and empty. The Galactic Council fleet responded according to their battle doctrine. Shields up, weapons armed, defensive formations. Standard military procedure for engaging a hostile force. The Void Swarm consumed the first 3 ships before the Council fleet could even target them properly. Well, that's not working, Boram observed, watching the battle unfold from the Resilient Dawn's position on the fleet's periphery. The Council ships were firing everything they had at the swarm vessels, but every energy beam, every projectile, every exotic particle weapon was simply absorbed and converted into more swarm ships. They're feeding, Kyung-soo said, studying the sensor readings. Every attack is making them stronger. The Council is literally giving them ammunition. Daeho watched another Council ship disappear into the growing darkness. The captain of that vessel had been a decent sort, despite being a 7-foot-tall crystalline spider with delusions of tactical genius. Veltar, you need to order your fleet to cease fire now. Cease fire? The ambassador's voice carried the electronic distortion of panic. They are destroying us. Because you're feeding them, Young said, pulling up a tactical analysis on her screen. Look at the energy absorption patterns. Every shot you fire is being converted into swarm mass. You're not fighting them. You're helping them reproduce. The Council fleet continued their attack, pouring more energy into the growing darkness. The Void Swarm expanded like a cancer, each absorbed shot creating new vessels, new tendrils of hungry emptiness that reached out to consume more. They're not going to listen, Woojin said. Military doctrine is hard to overcome even when it's obviously not working. Then we do this ourselves, Daeho said. And Woo, what do we have in the cargo bay that wasn't designed to be a weapon? Mining charges, industrial cutting lasers, magnetic grapples. Some really interesting scrap metal from that job in the Vega system, Yunwoo listed. Oh, and about 40 tons of raw iron ore we picked up for ballast. Perfect. Inho, can you rig the mining charges for proximity detonation? Inho grinned. The mining charges aren't energy weapons. They work by creating focused pressure waves in solid matter. If the swarm ships are absorbing energy but not kinetic force, exactly. Boram, take us in. Not toward the swarm ships, but toward that asteroid field at grid reference 77 Mark 12. The asteroid field? Boram asked. That's nowhere near the battle. Trust me. The resilient Dawn broke formation and accelerated toward the asteroid field, leaving behind the increasingly desperate battle between the Council fleet and the growing Void Swarm. Several Council ships tried to contact them, demanding to know why they were abandoning the fight. We're not abandoning anything, So Young replied. We're just changing the rules. In the asteroid field, Dong Hyun and his team went to work with the efficiency of people who had spent years salvaging useful materials from hostile environments. They welded proximity charges to the largest asteroids, rigged them with simple guidance systems, and loaded them into the ship's industrial launchers. This is completely insane, Jiwoo said cheerfully, working outside the ship to attach the final guidance packages. I love it when we get to be creative. The swarm ships absorb energy, Young-ho explained, running calculations on his portable computer. But mass is different. If we hit them with enough kinetic energy fast enough, we might be able to disrupt their absorption process. And if that doesn't work? Taemin asked. Then we try something else, Hyejin said. That's what we do. The asteroid bombardment began 20 minutes later. The Resilient Dawn's industrial launchers, designed for moving cargo containers in zero gravity, hurled modified asteroids at the Void Swarm with the casual efficiency of someone throwing rocks at a hornet's nest. The first asteroid hit a swarm ship and simply bounced off, spinning away into space. The second one shattered against the alien hull without doing any visible damage. The third one, however, exploded on contact, and something interesting happened. Did you see that? Kyung-soo said, reviewing the sensor data. For just a moment, the swarm ship's absorption field flickered. The kinetic impact disrupted whatever process they used to convert energy. So they can be hurt, Sujin said. We just need to hit them harder. The fourth asteroid was larger, faster, and carried enough explosive charges to level a small city. When it hit the lead swarm vessel, the explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. More importantly, the swarm ship's hull cracked. Fascinating, Minho said, studying the biological readings from the damaged vessel. They're not purely energy-based. There's an underlying physical structure, probably some kind of exotic matter matrix. The energy absorption is just an outer layer. The Void Swarm, apparently unused to anything that could actually damage them, began to change tactics. Instead of simply absorbing attacks, they started trying to avoid the incoming asteroids. This was a mistake, because it brought them into range of the Council fleet's conventional weapons. Now, Daeho broadcast to the Council ships, while their absorption fields are disrupted.
Hit them with everything you have.
The combined fleet opened fire, but this time their energy weapons found targets that couldn't simply absorb everything thrown at them. Swarm ships began to break apart, their impossible geometries collapsing into more conventional wreckage. But the swarm was learning, adapting. The remaining ships began to coordinate their movements, working together to intercept the asteroids before they could impact. They were also doing something else, reaching out with tendrils of darkness toward the Resilient Dawn itself. They're trying to drain our power directly, Yunwoo reported, and these tendrils are a lot faster than their main ships. Good, Hyejin said, making adjustments to the ship's power grid. I was wondering when they'd try something interesting. Instead of trying to block the energy drain, Hyejin did something that violated every safety protocol ever written. She opened the ship's power systems completely, giving the swarm access to everything, the reactor, the engines, the life support, even the coffee makers. What are you doing? Feltar screamed over the communication channel. Feeding them, Hyejin said calmly, watching her power readings spike into the red zone and keep climbing, but not what they expect. The energy the swarm was absorbing wasn't just power. It was information. Hyejin had routed the ship's entire computer system through the power grid, including the navigation computers, the sensor arrays, and Young-ho's collection of Earth music. You're giving them access to our databases? Woo-jin asked. I'm giving them a fatal case of indigestion, Hyejin replied. Let's see how their energy absorption process handles the complete works of Shakespeare. the entire Korean pop music catalog, and a detailed technical manual on coffee machine maintenance. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The swarm tendrils began to writhe and twist as they tried to process information that had no energy value, but couldn't be filtered out of the data stream. The lead swarm ship started making sounds that the translation matrix couldn't interpret, probably because they weren't actually language. Information poisoning, Ah Young said with obvious delight. They're designed to absorb pure energy, but they can't handle complex data structures. It's like feeding them indigestible fiber. The void swarm began to withdraw, their ships moving erratically as they struggled with the information overload. Some of the smaller vessels were actually breaking apart, their absorption processes completely overwhelmed by trying to digest the cultural database of an entire civilization. "This is impossible," Veltar said. "The void swarm has never retreated from any battle. They've never fought anyone stupid enough to deliberately feed them garbage data," Daeho said. "Sometimes the best weapon is the one your enemy doesn't expect." The swarm ships disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind confused council vessels and a battlefield full of floating asteroids and space debris. "Did we just win?" So Young asked. "No," Daeho said, watching the long-range sensors. "We just taught them that we're more trouble than we're worth. But they'll be back, and next time they'll be ready for our tricks." "Good," Jiwoo said, already planning improvements to their unconventional tactics. "I was getting bored anyway." The Void Swarm returned 3 days later with a completely different approach. Instead of the chaotic consumption that had marked their previous attacks, they arrived with what could only be described as diplomatic intent. A single ship, larger than anything they had deployed before, positioned itself at the edge of the system and simply waited. "That's new," Kyung-soo said, studying the readings from his sensor station. "No aggressive movements, no energy absorption fields active, no hostile intent that I can detect. It's just sitting there, waiting for us," Daeho said. "They want to talk." Ambassador Veltar's voice carried a note of panic that the translation matrix somehow managed to preserve. "You cannot seriously be considering communication with the Void Swarm. They are entropy incarnate. They cannot be reasoned with." "Everything can be reasoned with," So Young said, already working on establishing a communication link. "The trick is figuring out what language they speak." The first contact attempt was simple. Basic mathematical concepts transmitted as energy pulses. Prime numbers, geometric relationships, physical constants. The kind of universal concepts that any intelligent species should recognize. The swarm ship responded with something that made every quantum field detector on the resilient Dawn scream in electronic agony. It wasn't mathematics. It was pure concept, transmitted directly into the fabric of space-time itself. The message was complex beyond human comprehension, but the emotional content was clear: curiosity, and something that might have been respect. "They're not trying to threaten us," Soo-jin said, "working to interpret the quantum fluctuations. They're trying to understand us. We're the first species that's ever hurt them, and they want to know how. More than that," Ah Young added, studying the energy patterns. "They're impressed. Look at these harmonic resonances. If I'm reading this right, they think we're some kind of apex predator." The second message was clearer, transmitted through controlled fluctuations in local gravity. It was still conceptual rather than linguistic, but Young-ho managed to build a translation matrix based on the mathematical relationships. The message was simple: "Show us your world." "They want to see Earth," Jiwoo said. "They want to understand what kind of environment produces creatures like us." "Absolutely not," Veltar said. "You cannot give the Void Swarm the location of your home planet. They will consume it." "I don't think they will," Minho said quietly. "Look at their behavior patterns. They're not acting like predators anymore. They're acting like scientists." Daeho made the decision that would either save the galaxy or doom it. "Boram, set course for Earth and send a message ahead. Tell them we're bringing visitors." The journey to Earth took 2 days, with the massive swarm vessel following at a respectful distance. During the trip, the communication exchanges became more complex. The swarm was learning human concepts of language and meaning with frightening speed. By the time they reached Earth orbit, they were having actual conversations. "Your species is an anomaly," the swarm entity said, its words appearing as controlled distortions in the ship's communication system. "We have consumed 17 civilizations. All followed predictable patterns of growth, expansion, and resource depletion. You are different. Different how? Hyunwoo asked. You adapt to hostile conditions instead of eliminating them. You find utility in chaos. You create order from entropy instead of simply imposing structure. This should not be possible. Welcome to Earth, Heejin said dryly. Population, 8 billion. People who think impossible is just another word for Tuesday. The swarm ship took position in high orbit and began scanning Earth with sensors that operated on principles human science couldn't even identify. The readings they shared with the resilient Dawn crew showed Earth as the swarm entity perceived. Yet it was a planet-sized disaster that somehow sustained billions of complex life forms. Your atmosphere is corrosive, the entity observed. Your weather systems generate energy release equivalent to fusion weapons. Your geological processes create pressure and temperature extremes that should sterilize all organic matter. Your magnetic field fluctuates chaotically. Your star produces radiation that should have rendered this world uninhabitable billions of years ago. Yeah, Taemin said. That's pretty much Tuesday around here. And yet you thrive. More than thrive. You have achieved technological civilization despite existing in conditions that would kill any rational life form. Dong-hyun pulled up some historical data. You should see what this place was like during the ice ages. Or the volcanic periods. Or that time a really big rock hit us and killed all the dinosaurs. You survived planetary extinction events, the entity said, and for the first time its communication carried something that sounded like awe. Multiple extinction events. Survival is what we do, Woo Jin said. It's not impressive if you're used to it. The swarm entity was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. When it spoke again, its words carried a weight that made the quantum vacuum itself seem to listen. We understand now. We came to this galaxy seeking to impose the order of entropy, to reduce complexity to simplicity, to bring the peace of the void. We believed this was the natural way of things. And now, Daeho asked, now we realize that entropy and complexity can coexist, that chaos and order are not opposites but partners in an endless dance. Your species exists as proof that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than we believed. Inho was studying the long-range sensors. So what happens now? Do you go back to consuming civilizations? No, the entity said. We have learned that there are more interesting things than consumption. We wish to study the phenomenon you represent. We wish to understand how life can flourish in the face of cosmic horror. Well, So Young said, if you're looking for cosmic horror, you've definitely come to the right place. Ambassador Veltar, who had remained silent during the exchange, finally spoke. You're saying the Void Swarm is no longer a threat? The Void Swarm as you knew it no longer exists, the entity replied. We are now something else. Call us the Entropy Gardeners. We tend the chaos between the stars, ensuring that the universe remains interesting. Young-ho looked up from his calculations. That's actually beautiful. A cosmic maintenance crew keeping entropy from getting boring. We have a proposal, the entity said. Your species has mastered survival in impossible conditions. We offer you partnership. Help us understand the other species of this galaxy. Show us how life adapts to challenge. In return, we will clear the paths between stars of the obstacles that hinder exploration. Veltar's skin went through a color change that probably indicated either extreme joy or impending cardiac arrest. You're offering to remove the navigation hazards from our shipping lanes? We will convert them into interesting challenges instead of lethal traps, the entity clarified. Growth requires struggle, but struggle should not require death. The Galactic Council's response to this development was predictably complicated. Some species wanted to classify the entire incident as a diplomatic miracle. Others insisted it was some kind of elaborate trap. A few suggested that humanity was actually a secret weapon developed by the Void Swarm to infiltrate galactic civilization. They're not wrong about the secret weapon part, Ji-woo said as she watched the political chaos unfold on the Council communication channels. We just didn't know we were one. 6 months later, Captain Daeho found himself in the uncomfortable position of being a galactic celebrity. The resilient Dawn had been reassigned from salvage operations to what the Council called impossible situation consulting. Their first assignment was investigating a region of space where the laws of physics had apparently gone on strike. Their second was negotiating with a star that had achieved consciousness and was threatening to go supernova out of existential depression. I miss the old days, Deho said, reviewing their mission briefing. When the only things trying to kill us were radiation vacuum exposure and equipment failures. Don't worry, Ah Young said cheerfully. I'm sure we'll find something properly dangerous soon enough. The conscious star job might be fun, Taman added. I've never tried therapy on a stellar mass object before. Outside the ship, space itself had become more interesting since the entropy gardeners began their work. Navigation hazards still existed, but they followed rules that could be understood and worked with. The universe had become a vast playground for species brave enough to explore it. And at the center of it all, a small ship from a blue-green world that had taught its children to dance with disaster continued to prove that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy wasn't a weapon or a predator. It was hope, stubbornly refusing to die no matter what the universe threw at it. So, Sujin said as they prepared to jump to their next impossible assignment, anyone else think we accidentally saved the galaxy by being too stupid to know when we were beaten? That's not stupidity, Young-ho said. That's evolution. Earth taught us that the universe is always trying to kill you, so you might as well enjoy the fight. Best education system in the galaxy, Minho agreed. And somewhere in the depths of space, ancient entities that had once been the Void Swarm tended their gardens of controlled chaos, ensuring that the universe would always be interesting enough to be worth saving, even on Tuesdays.